John Frankenheimer, directing for television in the 1990s, was responsible for this incredibly powerful picture, released in 1994, titled The Burning Season, detailing the life and causes of Brazilian activist Chico Mendes. At a time wherein the governments of Brazil have been grossly abusing the Amazon and its inhabitants, it is important to realize that this is a game which the governing bodies of that nation have been apparently playing for decades now. Long have attempts been made to preserve the natural environment and the lives and well-being of those who still live amongst it, and how little progress in respects has been made since 1994 ought to be considered a horrific disappointment. To solely discuss the film, Frankenheimer does a terrific job, as he often has, although the material really does elevate the overall work above his other television productions of this time, I would suggest. Raul Julia stars as Mendes, delivering an extraordinary performance. It would be one of Julia's very last film performances. He passed away the same year. I'd like to read out Chico's biography as it currently is on Wikipedia. Or most of it anyway. Francisco Loco Alves Mendes Filho, this is Chico Mendes' father, was born on the 15th of December 1944 in a rubber reserve called Seringal Bom Futuro, outside of Zapuri, a small town in the state of Acre. He was the son of a second-generation rubber tapper, Francisco Mendes, and his wife, Arace. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, so do excuse me. Chico was one of 17 siblings, only 6 of whom survived childhood. At age 9, Chico began work as a rubber tapper alongside his father. At the time, the rubber industry across the nation was in decline, and land was frequently sold and burned for cattle pastures. Rubber tappers additionally faced a severe lack of education. Schools were frequently forbidden on and near plantations, as the owners did not want the workers to be able to read and do arithmetic. For this reason, Mendes did not learn to read until he was 18 years old, when he sought out help interpreting his bills. Mendes was taught to read and write by a man named Euclides Fernando Tavora, an activist turned rubber tapper. Most of his practice came from newspaper clippings on social and political issues within Brazil. These articles opened Chico's eyes to the widespread injustices in society, adding to his dissatisfaction with the treatment of seringueiros. After learning, I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm sure I have. After learning what he could from Tavora, Mendes became a literacy teacher in hopes of educating his community. As his fellow workers became more aware of unjust treatment, they formed the Rural Workers Union and the more localized Zapuri Rubber Tappers Union. Both of these organizations worked through peaceful protests to stop the logging and burning of the rainforest that acted as their livelihood. By the mid-1980s, Chico was known as both a radical unionist and an activist, though he also ran for several local political positions, such as state deputy and city councillor. To save the rainforest, Chico Mendes and the Rubber Workers Union asked the government to set up reserves, as they wanted people to use the forest without damaging it. They also used a very effective technique they called the empate, where rubber tappers blocked the way into rubber reserves, preventing their destruction. The Rubber Tappers Union was created in 1975 in the nearby town of Brasileia, with Wilson Pinheiro elected as the union's president and Mendes as its secretary. Mendes also played a central role in the creation of the National Council of Rubber Tappers in the mid-1980s. Mendes' group also had strong ties with the National Campaign for the Defense and Development of the Amazon, and helped organize the local Workers' Party support. When the first meeting of this new union was held in 1985 in the capital Brasilia, rubber tappers from all over the country came. The discussion expanded from the threats to their own livelihoods to the larger issues of road paving, cattle ranching, and deforestation. The meeting also caught the attention of the international environmentalist movement, giving the rubber tappers a larger audience for their grievances. The group embraced a larger alliance of environmentalism rather than strict Marxism, in spite of the bourgeois associations of the former. Another result of these discussions was the coining of the concept and the term extractive reserves. In November of that year, Adrian Carwell, an English filmmaker, filmed much of the proceedings of this meeting as part of a documentary he was making about Mendes, which aired in 1990. I actually haven't watched that, I really ought to. It's kind of a shame I haven't. I'm disappointed in myself I haven't. Mendes believed that relying on rubber tapping alone was not sustainable, and that the seringueiros needed to develop more holistic cooperative systems that used a variety of forest products such as nuts, fruit, oil, and fibers, but they needed to focus on building strong communities with quality education for their children. In March 1987, the Environmental Defense Fund and National Wildlife Federation flew Mendes to Washington, D.C. in an attempt to convince the Inter-American Development Bank, World Bank, and U.S. Congress to support the creation of extractive reserves. Mendes won several awards for his work, including the United Nations Environmental Programme Global 500 Roll of Honour Award in 1987 and the National Wildlife Federation's National Conservation Achievement Award in 1988. In 1988, a man named Dali Alves da Silva bought part of a rubber reserve called Cachoeira, where relatives of Mendes lived, and which is affiliated to the local rural workers' union in Zapuri, while the sale of the section was disputed by the family of the vendor, who claimed he had no legal right to sell it. Silva tried to drive them off their land and increase his ranch holdings. The rubber tappers of Cachoeira stood firm and set up roadblocks to keep Silva out. In 1988, Mendes launched a campaign to stop Silva from logging the area that its inhabitants wanted demarcated as an extractive reserve. Mendes not only managed to stop the planned deforestation and create the reserve, but also gained a warrant for Dali's arrest for a murder committed in another state, Parana. He delivered the warrant to the federal police, but it was never acted upon. It was actually one of this gentleman da Silva's sons who would be responsible for the assassination of Chico Mendes in 1988. A very powerful film, and I would suggest it is a worthy tribute to an extraordinary, brave and virtuous individual, a manifestation of Christ's selflessness and stridence. Chico Mendes is an incredibly inspiring, heroic defender of the defenseless. I would highly recommend anyone track down The Burning Season, though this will not be easy, and so I implore HBO or whomever holds the rights to the film now to re-release it. This film will be more important than ever before, but it is hoping things will get better, although remain on guard. This film might make one angry at the sociopathic brutality, the vicious greed of the wicked, power-hungry elites and their thuggish enforcers who barely contain, clumsily disguise the enjoyment of their barbarism. Stay watchful, keep supporting the noblest causes, and don't give in to the false promises of the powerful. You know when one snickers behind closed doors, so don't ignore it. In any case, support the cause of Brazil's natural habitat and the people who call it their home. Visit the links in the description in case you would like to find out more.